And good morning, my beautiful America. Welcome back to the All-American Book Club. Ladies and gentlemen, boy, do we have a special treat for you here at the All-American Book Club. I feel like I'm the odd kid out because I think this is the first time we've ever had Andrew Klavan to the show. And thanks to Grace Baker, yes, hat tip Grace Baker, you have introduced me to a brand new for me series all about Andrew and his faith, but his most recent book, After the Dark. I'm holding up for those on the YouTube channel, but also for those who are tuning in live DR here in our nation's capital. Andrew Klavan has captivated me on so many different levels. And you guys, I don't have to do too much. You know, he's at the Daily Wire, and you know, he is so well known for his New York Times bestselling books. But I get this morning to have the great opportunity to sit down and have a really important conversation with Andrew, one on his book, and two, it's all about faith. So please help me welcome to the show, Andrew Klavan.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to say, the most important thing I can say is it's After That, the Dark. I just want to make sure that people have the title, After That, the Dark.
Thank you. I held it up. After That, the Dark. Yes. And I'll tell you what, like I mentioned, I sat down and started reading it, and I called Grace, and I'm like, Grace, oh my gosh, I just had a night. And she's like, no, you're good. You're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. But here's the other thing, Andrew. Let me just say this. I live by the Marine Corps base Camp Lejeune and MARSOC. And so they've been doing training nonstop. And I'm like hearing helicopters and the sounds of freedom. But I think that's what attributed to, I thought planes were flying in my bedroom. So anyway. All that to say, I am a veteran spouse. I am proud to be a veteran spouse. I love our military. But let's talk about you. Let's talk about what inspired After That, the Dark, and a Cameron Winter mystery. Tell me about this book.
Well, Cameron Winter is a former government assassin, essentially, who used to arrange deaths for the government, and he's now has started to wonder, first of all, is the country that he went to fight for, is it really a country he still wants to fight for? And he's left the business, and now he wants to put his life together. And After That, the Dark, I know this sounds a little self-serving, but it's the fifth book in this series, but I wish people would start with this book, because this is the book where he really finally becomes himself. He's been wrestling with a lot of problems, a lot of trying to get past the things he's done, but this is the book where he falls in love. And he meets this girl, and basically on sight, he thinks, this is a girl for me, and she's totally different than he is. He is a very dark character, a guy who's really been through a lot. He has no faith. He's not an atheist. He just thinks, things are mysterious, but I have no idea what's going on. And he meets this girl who's just a complete out and out Christian, just an absolute, a believer. And he doesn't even know why. He just falls for her on the spot. And they go out on a date, and she knows that he is interested in weird murders. So she tells him a true story that she knows about a guy who was murdered in a locked cell where no one could get in and out. There were guards outside. Nobody can figure out how it happened. And to impress her, he starts to try and solve this murder mystery. And he opens up a can of conspiracy like nothing he's ever seen. And he realizes that he is surrounded. So here's a guy who's trying to get out of the assassination business, suddenly realize he may have to start to kill some people if he's going to stay alive and if he's going to keep the woman he loves alive. And so it's a mystery story, and it's a love story, and it's a thriller. And I can say, in true humility, I think it's one of the best books I ever wrote, and I wish people would pick it up. And I think you will then go back and want to read how he got to that place and go back and read it from the beginning.
That's what I was going to ask you. So many of the mystery series I read. So, this show, we do pro-America books. We do all about faith. We do all about our military veterans. We do mysteries, and all the mystery series I read, I take my time going through them because I really enjoy it. But here's the question I ask all the authors. Can you do them standalones as well? So for instance, this is my first Andrew Klavan book, and I'm behind the times, but I now feel like I'm a cool kid. So I'm going to go order all your other books, thanks to Grace Baker. But can you do them as standalone as well?
Yeah, I purposely write them so you can do them that way. And this one in
Mhm.
particular, I feel is a good place to start. You know, in the classic stories like, you know, Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, they start in the middle and then they go
Mhm.
back to the beginning and then they go
Okay.
through. And this is the place to start with. After that, the dark, and then go back to the first one, which is a Christmas novel, When Christmas Comes, and follow him through, because this is the story in which you see all the parts of him. You see who this guy is and who he wants to be and who he was, and they're all those stories are in place.
Does the character development for you and the inspiration behind the series, is that attributed to your background? Is that attributed to where you've come from? Or where have you been able to do this character development? I always ask that of authors who have, series like this. How do they do this? How did this come for you?
Well, in part, this character came to me because I noticed in the 2000s, when there were a lot of great TV shows on, suddenly television became our major art form in the early 2000s. And
Right.
every manly man on TV was a bad guy. So you
Mhm.
had The Sopranos, you had Breaking Bad, you had
Yep.
all these different, you know, The Shield, all of these different things where the guy was corrupt, but he was a guy, you know. And I realized I had been writing characters like that for about 10 years before that. Like I wrote a book called True Crime, in
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
Clint
Yeah.
Eastwood made into a
Yeah.
film, and in which the character is not a good guy, but he is the guy who can do the thing that has to be done. And I realized when you outlaw masculinity, only outlaws can be masculine. And that was the problem we had gotten ourselves into. And I think that this is the problem we are facing, that a shortage of men who know how to be men. When I started working at the Daily Wire, I was shocked because I was working with men much younger than myself. And I was shocked at the hostility with which they spoke about women, the anger with which they spoke about women. And I realized that they had been in some ways abused by a feminist culture that counted them as toxic, that made them feel bad, that made them
Yep.
feel like they should stand down and not be their natural selves. And so Cameron Winter is the, my my character who's trying to work that out. He
Yeah.
is a guy who has been an anti-hero. He has been a bad guy, but now he wants to use his incredible courage and his skills and his abilities to be something else. And he doesn't really know how to do it. And he is starting to try and learn how to do that. And that's why I say I think you should start with this book, because this is the book in which he finally finds somebody that he can attach this solitude and loneliness to, and say, okay, I actually need somebody in my life as well. And what does that mean? What responsibilities does that put on him? And what is that going to mean for his attempt to sort of get away from the life of violence that he's lived? And so I think you'll see he's a real character. My characters don't always do the right things. They don't always think the right things. There aren't always nice people, but you'll know that they're people you could meet on the street. And this is, I think this is so important. When I when I was when I was becoming a Christian, one of my
Yeah.
deepest fears is that I would lose my sense of reality and start to write happy,
Mm.
smiley
Yeah.
Christian novels where
Yeah.
you think like, yeah, but that's not like life.
Yeah.
If that's what I have to believe in God, I can't believe in that because I know
Yeah.
that's not like life. So I have kept my books very sharp and hard. And yet I think that they are imbued with the sense that redemption is possible. And I think that that's, you know, what you'll find in the book.
I can we talk a little bit about that really
Yeah,
quickly with
sure. Of
regards to
course.
your faith journey? I mean, I I'm speechless. I I mean, I really am. I was raised in a Christian home, but my faith became real to me probably when I went to Washington to go to college,
Mm,
9/11. I was a young staff member on Capitol Hill, and right after that, and then getting married to a, Iraq veteran and going through all these different aspects of my journey, it really increased my faith even more. And it's like God has just become every day. It's in the in between. It's every breath. It's every moment. But it wasn't always like that for me. And then seeing what you describe as your childhood and then the moments that you felt like God was calling. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was a long journey because I was kind of I always joke that people like you are sort of born at home. You're born on home plate in a way because you're
Yeah.
born at least in the faith. Whereas I was kind of like one of those outward bound programs where they drop you off in the desert and you have to find your way home with a piece of string and a paper clip, you know. And like the thing that really kept me on point was in fact a novel that I read when I was 19 years old, Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, that convinced me that all the people around me who were saying that morality is relative were wrong. And that novel, reading that novel, I can remember the moment. I was 19 years old, and I can remember the moment I thought to myself, "No, this relative morality stuff makes no sense." And once I realized that, I realized that there had to be a God, but I was immersed in a world in which that was a stupid thing to think. All the smart kids didn't believe. They not only didn't believe, they didn't even treat of the subject. You couldn't say to people, well, is there a possibility? Because you just didn't do it. I lived in New York. I lived in LA. I lived in London. I lived among writers. I lived among artists and intellectuals, and they wouldn't talk about it. And yet my logic just kept bothering me. I went through a very dark period in my 20s when I really became suicidal. I mean, there's no question about it. I went into an absolute, almost hallucinatory depression. And then by what I now consider to be a miracle, I went out to get help. I knew I needed help or I was going to die. And I contacted a psychiatrist. And by what I truly believe is a miracle, he cured me. I've never heard of that happening to any other person. Seriously, I've never heard of anybody going to a psychiatrist and just being cured. I went in there suicidal. Within 2 years, I was a joyful, happy, fulfilled person. Within 5 years, I was out. I stopped going and I was really happy. And so while I was miserable, I could not embrace faith because I thought it was a crutch. I thought, how can you believe in something if you just grabbed on hold of it because you were in trouble? That's an actual stupid thing to think. But I was very stubborn and I was very stupid. Obviously that's the moment you should reach for the lifesaver when you're drowning. But that logic didn't occur to me. What occurred to me was that this won't be real if I grab hold of it. But then when things started to go better, I just started to realize my logic holds. I know that some things are wrong, no matter how many people say it. You could land on a planet in which everybody says killing a baby is right. It would be wrong, and I knew that for a fact. And so there had to be a God. And so I started to pray and I started almost accidentally praying. And further transformed my life. And ultimately I said to God, you have done such a work in my life. I'm nobody. What am I supposed to do for you? And God essentially said to me, you should be baptized. And I was like, huh? What? Um, and I went through 5 months of real struggle with it. And then I realized, oh, funnily, oddly enough, God was right. And so I had to do this. And that was really the final turning point in this long movement out of sorrow and sadness into, I mean, about 3 weeks after I was baptized, my wife turned to me and we have a kind of a magical marriage. I mean, we've been together 50 years and we had one argument about 35 years ago. It's just been an incredible romance. And she turned to me and she said, you're a different person. Yeah, a serenity has fallen over you I've never seen before. And that has remained with me. And God, I don't even know how people grow inwardly if they don't have God to grow toward. It's like being a flower without the sun. I don't know how they do it. I'm assuming some people do it, but I
It's
don't understand it.
yeah.
It's huge.
Well, as the passion that just comes from you, it's just like this huge bright light, and I absolutely love it.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and as I work on a lot of projects that are personal but also professional, and that is fighting Christian persecution, fighting it overseas,
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah.
and but also seeing it here on the home front. We're seeing it more and more. And us having both, you were from New York, I worked in New York, we are seeing this change that is happening in the city. And I still believe God is a God of the city, but I'm concerned in the sense of what we see that could be happening in this mayoral election, repercussions on either side. And the whole Sharia law thing is very concerning to me. And with the lights that you and I shine, along with all other Christians, is it a concern to you that you think we may see that even more so if, in fact, we see a Mondami get into the mayoral office for the city?
Yeah, I know he's a bad man. He's a sinister, terrible person who's lying through his teeth. The things that he has said, that the things that he has said before this, we're now supposed to
Yeah.
suddenly forget about,
Right.
and just
Right.
believe this. He has a very charming smile, no doubt about it, and that's what we're supposed to vote for. And you sit there and you think like, how stupid can people be? But the answer is he's probably going to be the mayor of the city,
Yeah.
and this is after De Blasio almost ran the city into the ground. And so, people got to learn. Every generation has to learn that socialism doesn't work. This thing with the Sharia law, the problem we have in America is the problem of scale. That's what I call it anyway, which is this. You know, can a Muslim be a good person? I know many Muslims who are wonderful, wonderful
Absolutely.
people. However, if you have a city like Dearborn that goes almost, it's now, I think, close to 50%, if not more, Muslim, you are going to have a city that is antithetical to American values.
Right.
And I believe in American values, and I believe being antithetical to it is wrong. So I think there are other countries where you can go and have Muslim majorities. I don't think this is one of them. And I think, it's the same with everything. Can a woman be a good lawyer? Yes. Should a law firm be fit more than 50% women? I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that this is the problem we're always dealing with. We want everybody to be free, each person to be free,
Yeah.
but we have set up a system where you have to hire people to get the right
Right.
number of people, and that's
Right.
that's wrong. Should hire the people who want to do it and can do it. So yeah, Mamdani is a sinister man, and it's a very frightening thing that children are kind of following along with him. He's promising things he can't deliver. He's promising things that we know don't work.
Right.
He is a part of this Bernie Sanders part of the party. Bernie has lived through 80 years of socialist failure and has not changed his mind. There's a word for that. The word is insane, but like that's who he is, and so he's backing this guy who's going to bring it to New York. The thing we have to hope is that
Yes.
the, the
Yes.
the the blessing of God is that these things don't work.
Right.
And what you have to hope is that we're not England, where they're going to shut us down. We have the First Amendment. We have to stick to the First Amendment. As long as people can talk and feel this doesn't work, I think that maybe it'll have a good outcome, and that a new generation will learn that this
Hmm.
stuff stinks. I
Yeah.
mean, not everybody's as stupid. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a genuine phenomenon who could live through the history he lived through. The
Right.
most important thing Bernie Sanders ever said, as far as I'm concerned, I think to he was talking to Brett Baer maybe, and he said we should have a socialist system more like Norway. And the interviewer said, Norway isn't a socialist country. And he said, well, I don't know anything about Norway. So let's, forget and I thought like, yeah, you don't know anything about anything, because this fails every single
Right.
time, and it will fail again, that's a guarantee. And so the question, what we can hope is that it'll take the rest of that left wing of the Democrat Party with it. So
Yes, please.
maybe New York is going to be the sacrificial lamb that gets rid of
Uh,
this part of the party. Well, we can only hope.
yeah, no, well, obviously you and I think a lot alike. And I think my greatest concern is that, the church, where is our church right now? And
Yeah.
it seems very quiet. And, as we talk about the Christian persecution conversations, both here on the home front, we see it in St. Paul, Minnesota, we see it in New York, we're seeing it all over this country, but where is the church?
Yeah.
And I'm calling the church out. I really am. It's where is the call to action to rise up? What are your thoughts? I mean,
Well,
final.
well, well. In this business of the being a
Yeah.
podcasting business and everything, there's a
Yeah.
thing called audience capture, which is that you want to you don't want to lose your audience, so you don't want to say things that they don't want to hear. But sometimes what they don't want to hear is the truth. And
Yeah.
so, if you're a good podcaster, you tell them the truth, and you lose an audience for a while until the
Yeah.
audience starts to figure out, oh, here's a guy who'll tell me the real deal. He won't lie to me.
Absolutely.
Uh, but but a lot of people are afraid to do that. They have the numbers, they want to keep the numbers. So with the church, that's essentially what has happened.
Yeah.
I believe in America, the church was very popular. It through Reagan, it became part of the political system, and
Right.
now they're afraid of losing people by speaking the truth. And I think that's a real thing. Pope Benedict XVI, who was a genius and a truly great mind, said the church is going to have to get small. before it gets large again. It's going to have to cut back to its true believers. And I think that, I think that that's what's going to have to happen. It's going to have to pull in. It's going to have to say, when I came to the place I live in now and I had to choose a church, I went on a list of the churches, and anything that said all are welcome, I wouldn't go, because I thought I thought it ought to say some are welcome. The people who believe in God and Christ
Yeah.
are welcome. And you're welcome if you're looking for God, but if you're actually coming to change the church into your image, you're not welcome. And so I think that that's the problem. The church has got to get over audience capture. Listen. This church started out with all this leaders being killed for what they believed. I think maybe they could lose some. They could lose some audience to get back to where they believe, and that's what Pope Benedict XVI said. That's what I believe is going to have to happen, and we shouldn't be afraid. That's what is.
Yeah.
Jesus says it again and again. Angels say it every time they appear in the Bible. Don't be afraid.
Be not afraid. I go before you always.
Right, right.
Absolutely. So in the final, okay, I'm holding up Andrew Klavan's brand new book. After that, The Dark. Okay, you guys, brand new book. Grab your pumpkin spice latte, find that warm Christmas blanket and the fire, and snuggle up, and maybe have your husband or a friend around just in case that evening, if it's raining or something. It is the perfect book. And you know what? It's a little bit too big for stocking stuff for Andrew, but I think we could, it'll definitely
You can
make
wrap.
it. Huh?
You can wrap it.
You can wrap it. You can wrap it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now I feel I'm part of the cool kids club. So Andrew, thank you for making me a part of that. I am so glad to know you. Thank you for being here at the All American Book Club. God bless you, my friend.
Oh, thank you. And back at you. And please say hello to Grace for me.
Oh, I will. I will. For all those who are tuning in, stay tuned for our next segment. We'll be right back.